Wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna
Welcome, my friends. It's Talk to Solomon time. That's me, Stan Solomon, my co-host.
Chief Steve.
And my other co-host, Brent Johnson. Brent.
Johnson right here.
And, of course, our guest of honor, Dr. Alan Keyes. Dr. Keyes, how are you tonight?
I'm fine. How are you, Stan?
Excellent, excellent. You brushed your teeth and everything tonight. I can see you looking good. All right. We're going to do a little experiment tonight. I need everyone's cooperation. I've got like 400 stories. I'm not going to cover all of them, but I want to just name the story, and we're going to go around the horn, starting with you, Dr. Keyes, where we just want to give kind of an overview, not a treatise. The first story is Bob Costas, who took the opportunity of the murder-suicide in the NFL with this fellow Jovan, murdered the mother of his child after boozing it up and cheating on her the night before, then went to the coach to lay a guilt trip on the coach and shot himself. This 25-year-old guy who was commiserating while sitting in his Bentley over what he should do after he had just murdered his girlfriend because she was mad that he had spent the night with another girl, so he shot her 9 times. My opinion, he was trash. It's unfortunate he didn't shoot himself first and save the girl who was the mother of his child and the coach who's a good guy, and he should have just shot himself because he was trash. My opinion. Dr. Keyes.
Well, Stan, I'm not sure what the opinion is on the overall episode because people do crazy things and they do bad things, and those things are to be condemned and regretted. Well, I did understand in this case is it didn't cost us them try to use this as some big platform to push for taking away all our ability to defend ourselves.
It was the guns' fault.
Guns were involved.
It was the guns'
so forth. I mean, it's all crazy. And the end result of that, of course, is I read an article just the other day where somebody had a teacher in a classroom had bravely fought off his own son who was all angry with him. I mean, really angry, because the son attacked him with a bow and arrow, right? And here was this man with an arrow stuck in him who then fought off the attacker while others were able to escape from the violence. So what should we do then, Stan? Ban all bows and arrows? Cars cause all kinds of carnage on the highway, including people who, by the way, use them as weapons of destruction, purposely going after other people to kill them. Shall we stop everybody from driving? I think these people are all of them going down a road which is based on the simple recognition of one truth. There can be no self-government, no liberty without self-control. They then draw the conclusion, since there are some people who have no self-control, therefore nobody should have any liberty. It just doesn't make sense.
Well said. Brent.
Very, very well said. If I can add to this, the various members of the Kansas City Chiefs made comments about this exact issue before Bob Costas said what he had to say. They said, hey, you have a gun for self-defense. You have a gun to protect your family. You have a gun. They give all the right reasons. There were 2 or 3 of his teammates said this. So, the idea that, if there were no guns, nothing bad would happen, as Alan says, is ridiculous. I mean, I could use a chair. I could bang the chair over your head and kill you. Should we ban all chairs? A hammer. Should we ban all hammers? Go on forever and ever with that. But his own teammates said that despite what happened, that doesn't mean that you should take the guns away. And many they have guns, and they have them to protect their family.
Well said. And by the way, if she, the mother of his 3-month-old daughter, had a gun, then maybe she could have helped him to off himself, and she'd still be alive. Chief?
Well, the Second Amendment was not enacted for us to go hunting or to protect ourselves from burglars. It was enacted for us to be able to arm ourselves against invasions and protect ourselves against our own government. And the left knows they can never truly control us as long as we have guns. I'd like to make an analogy here in this case, and if guns are responsible for this crime, then Bob Costas' microphone is responsible for his idiotic statement.
And I know exactly where he should put that microphone. All right, the next story. Police officers, not the chief, of course, have said to Congress, we need logs of all text messages sent by Americans. You know what? Next thing they'll want a probe, one in your brain and one in your butt, to see what you smell like and what you're thinking. Dr. Keys.
Well, Stan, I think you summarized it in that last remark very well, and unfortunately, I don't think that what you just said is actually just a joke. Because when you think about what is even now going on, where they're introducing chips into elementary schools and people are having to fight off the idea that somehow or another implanting everybody with a device that's going to allow the government to keep track of them, this is no longer science fiction. It's no longer future fiction. It's happening right now. And I think we have to come to terms with a simple truth. If we do not hold on to the concept of limited government limited by respect for the rights of the people, which also means, by the way, by respect for their responsibility for themselves on the presumption that they will act responsibly. If we eliminate that, then there is no limit to the control that government will have over us. There's no halfway house. There's no stopping point before you get to absolute totalitarianism of a repressive nature that will include every word we speak, everything we do, being under the surveillance of others, and where we can be called to an account in an arbitrary way for whatever violates their understanding of the politically correct.
And there you've hit the key. Brent?
I just the other week interviewed a gentleman named Christopher Field from Australia. He's a video documentarian, and he made a piece, which I have on my website in the video gallery, called The Little Government That Could. And he tells the story like a fable, okay, of this little government that started off with all these repressive and limited limitations on its abilities, but over time, as people slept and as people forgot, and as the people who created him died, you know, he was able to take advantage of every single crisis that people encountered to give me a little bit more power, give me a little bit more control, you know, and I'll take care of you. And that's what we have today. We have the little government that has become so big that it will take care of everybody and anybody. And what Alan said is absolutely correct. We have an absolute right, but more than that, we have a duty to be responsible for ourselves, not to look to our government. It was not created to take care of us. It's not what it's supposed to do. And when we seek to do that, everything, all the limitations fall down, and we lose all of the controls that we have on government. And you know, I think if you get a chance, go to my website, freedomradio.us. Go to the video gallery, and you'll see it up near the top. The Little Government That Could. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's absolutely brilliant. And it ends with him saying, you know, now I'm this big, powerful government. Nobody's going to stop me as long as you continue to remain asleep.
Chief?
And that's where we are today.
Well, let's take two scenarios. One, first of all, we text with some of our friends or associates and we criticize the government in some fashion. Should we be able to exercise a reasonable right of privacy from those conversations? Another flip side of the coin is we have a daughter that's been kidnapped and abducted, and now we want to search for any text messages that may help us lead to her abductor. So we have two different scenarios there that both seem important. But what we should never, ever have to sacrifice our freedom to be protected. The police do not need to violate our rights in order to protect us. So any of these discussions, we must always err on the side of liberty and freedom rather than on oppression.
Well said. And by the way, it doesn't make any difference what you say.
If I can add one more on this.
All right, just a second. It does make a difference what you say The only thing that makes a difference is what the people looking at it think you said. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, and you know, our Constitution provides for the situation that Steve described, the young woman has been kidnapped and all that. You go to a judge, you present evidence, the judge weighs the evidence and decides to issue a warrant. What's happened here is warrants have become, due process has become so inconvenient for the cops. They don't want, you know, we don't want the inconvenience. Make it easy on us so that we can just get all the information. And I'm sad to say that in Australia, this is exactly how they were trying to control the internet. They went to the internet service providers, and they put the controls on them. Same thing. The police are asking Congress to go not to the people, go to the telecommunications companies and the internet service providers and put the conditions on them so that you're not responsible for the intrusion into people's privacy. They are.
All right, Brent. I want to make this quick. Chief.
Just a little follow-up. Some of these providers don't keep any records whatsoever. So part of this request is to make them keep records for like 60 days or whatever. And so, but again, that's just a stepping stone. That's one step that leads to the next step, that leads to the next step, that leads to loss of liberty.
All right.
And then
Go ahead, Dr. Keys.
Because it seems to me that if they start walking down this road, they are, of course, aren't they, going to assure us that the privacy thus invaded and the things discovered by that invasion are not then going to be employed for political purposes. But who in their right mind would accept these assurances? We always forget that part of the reason for these safeguards is that it is absolutely rational to assume that this kind of power will be systematically abused, and that will then become further leverage in the destruction of any possibility of freedom in the country.
Which is what they want. Mm-hmm. They want the absence of freedom in the United States, which means there will be no freedom anywhere on the globe. All right, next point. In the country of Wales, and people say, Wales, where the heck is that? Well, it's on the west coast of Great Britain, but Wales is now considering, quote, deeming consent for organ donation. Now, you remember when Nancy Pelosi, Miss Butt Ugly herself, said they were going to deem something was already passed even though they've not had a vote? Well, that's the concept. In Wales, they're talking about deeming consent, meaning that everyone has consented in Wales and eventually in England and eventually in the Western world and eventually on the globe to donating your organs unless you have specifically opted out. Well, what that means is you go into the emergency room with a runny nose and you may never come out because someone more important than you needs your heart. Dr. Keys.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm sitting here thinking about the implications of this, especially when you put it together with the things that some people are pushing with respect to what ought to be our freedom. So when you are in certain situations, they're now trying to persuade us that euthanasia and all these things are wonderful. We also know, of course, that in Holland and other places it's been done without the knowledge or consent of the individual who's being euthanized. And that will solve a lot of problems, won't it, including the one I just talked about, because if you have people who are in opposition to your policies, you can deem them to be people who want to be euthanized. and think of all the problems you're going to solve. This is madness. How can we sit here talking about this as if the purpose behind these kinds of maneuvers now isn't obvious and the ultimate conclusion, the place where you end up, isn't quite clear? It is. We're headed into a world where these governments are going to start out this way with all this change in language, and at the end of the day, it's going to be a nightmare world in which the arbitrary whims of human ambition and passion will be claiming lives by the millions. It'll make the 20th century look like a dress rehearsal for evil.
Brent?
Yeah, the thing with Wales is actually even worse than you've described, because essentially what they're proposing is that they're going to make the default position be that everybody is an organ donor, unless they have gone through some kind of as of yet undefined process to opt out. So let's say your father or your grandfather is sick, okay, and while he's in the hospital, he has a heart attack. Well, guess what? He didn't know anything about this. He knows nothing about opt-out, so he doesn't have anything on file. They're going to take his organs, and there's nothing you as a family member can do about it. But what makes this worse is that Wales, as part of this proposal, is submitting that anybody who is in the country for, I believe it's 60 days, is considered subject to the jurisdiction of this proposal. You're not a Welsh citizen, you're there visiting or something. Guess what? After 60 days, you, if they have their way with it, you would become subject to this default position. And so they're essentially saying, they're trying to make it so you can't even leave Wales. You can't declare non-citizenship. You can't get out of being subject to this, even if you're a visitor, potentially. This is, and Alan said it right, this is madness. This is what I've been saying for years. This is an insane asylum. And, people need to stop cooperating with this, stop going along with this, and actively resisting.
All right, let's go to the chief.
It seems to me that Wales is just being efficient. They've now allowed us to nickname every politician there Dr. Kevorkian.
There you go. They all have the same name. All right, I want to talk about Trayvon Martin. This is Solomon's opinion, not anybody else's. Trayvon Martin, in my opinion, was a worthless thug and got exactly what he asked for. He lived like a thug. He died like a thug. And all this other crap that went on was just that crap. Well, just today, finally, somehow they figured out they had a picture, believe it or not, a color picture of George Zimmerman in the back of the police car the very night that this happened, and his nose is all swollen up and blood's coming out of it, and he obviously, what he was saying was the reason the police didn't arrest him to begin with. Dr. Keys.
Well, Stan, I have never understood how this episode was flogged into something of great significance once the actual facts were on the table. Because I think your description of Trayvon Martin is clear. I think what we learned about the self-defense that was involved, I think it settled the issue in a lot of minds, but it's just one of those phenomena in our society now, which has to do, I think, with the fact that we're dealing with the media out there that is out of touch with anything like the common sense of people and in touch only with what the elitist faction wants to promote on any given day. And that means it doesn't matter how the common sense of our people has decided. We're going to be we're going to be beaten over the head with this kind of nonsense because it is part of what the propaganda machine means to achieve. And I think it's one of the sure signs that we have long ago crossed the line that once divided media in this country from media in totalitarian states like the old Soviet Union. It is addressed a little better and it comes across a little glossier, but we're dealing with the same kind of propaganda.
Brent.
I absolutely agree with what Alan just said. As a society, we have abandoned the principle of truth. At least we have relegated it to an important level. Truth doesn't matter. What matters is selling advertisements, selling airtime, making money, okay, building the corporate paradigm for the future. And so once that value system is in place, it's no wonder that the media go out and say, this is an opportunity for us to sell advertising and get viewers and get listeners and get people to buy our paper and subscribe. And it's an opportunity to make more money and have more influence over people's lives. So since truth has no serious value in our society, there's nobody out there to say, it's not true. It doesn't matter because truth has no value. until we fix that, I don't know how to fix that anymore, but until that changes, until we are able to reinstill in our society a value for truth just because it's true, none of this is going to change. It's only going to get worse.
Chief?
Well, you can connect the dots between the Trayvon Martin case and Bob Costas's comments and see that the left is going to do anything they can to take guns away from Americans. That's their goal. They don't really care who gets injured in the process. But for all of those people out there, all of us that say, I'll never give up my gun or for my cold dead hands, if you do exercise your rights, be prepared, because in this case, this man exercised his rights and now he's facing a second-degree murder charge. You must be prepared for all of that to happen to you.
He will not be found guilty, in my humble opinion. All right, the next story. In the wonderful country of Holland, the country of Rembrandt, of some incredible talent, but also some total lack of morality, where they kill people without bothering to let them know why they're killing them, not criminals. They have decided they want to create scum villages, I'm quoting, where bad neighbors, where bad people, where bad individuals will be sent to be retrained, and it won't be nice and it won't be pretty. Now, there's one little problem. How do you describe bad? If you believe in, I don't know, cutting your grass and your neighbors don't like people that cut their grass, you're bad. If you believe in playing music and your neighbors don't like your music, then you're bad. I've been guilty of that, I'll tell you that. You see where I'm going. Dr. Keys.
Well, Stan, I think we need to, at this point, start by recalling what country we're talking about. Because Holland was one of those countries, as you'll recall, that was in the vanguard of promoting the idea of any kind of licentious behavior you want goes in society. There should be no norms, there should be no standards of decency and so forth, and public behavior, this, that, and the other thing. And I always told people that this kind of an approach is a trap. They start by luring people into behavior that is destructive of themselves and of the kind of decent sort of atmosphere that you need to have prevailing in a civilized society. Then when the actual bad consequences of that start to overflow and fill the place with sort of moral sewage, then they decide, oh, we have no alternative but to take freedom away from everybody and start assigning people according to our will to the categories in which we shall place them. And I think that this is where they're obviously headed. It's the next stage in the implementation of totalitarianism. First, you pretend that you're going to let people do whatever they please. And then when they start behaving like animals, oh, well, the people who are no longer behaving the way we define human beings, we're now going to, and you start describing the way their lives are going to be circumscribed. And I think it's quite obvious. By the time this is done, you'll have a little elite class of people dictating the way everybody should behave, and depending on what box they fit into, they will then classify all the rest as in need of absolute control by them.
Why am I seeing Obama, Hillary, Kerry, and Joe Bite Me on that committee? Maybe it's just me. Brent.
Well, yeah, this is actually not limited to Holland. Holland is just the latest entry into it. They're talking, well, first, what they're actually talking about is people who display, and I quote, antisocial behavior. Antisocial behavior. And all the things Helen said are absolutely correct, except that this is not started in Holland. This has been going on in the fascist United Kingdom. That's my reference to that country. For quite a while now, where they have been punishing people and fining people and even imprisoning people for what they call antisocial behavior, where you're not behaving in a manner that we decide is appropriate. And I think that indeed you're going to see this kind of tactic spread throughout Europe, and once they get it across Europe, they'll go beyond into other continents as well, and the U.S. will take a lesson from it, and Australia will take a lesson from it. And again, until people start taking responsibility for themselves, instead of calling 911 every time someone upsets you, they're playing music too loud. Come police and take care of it. It's supply and demand. As long as people are demanding the officials, the authorities, take care of these situations, there's going to be a supply that comes along of these kinds of people to take care of them. When people start taking responsibility for themselves and stop looking to the fascist police to do it for them, then these types of circumstances will diminish. And by the way, there's always that. There's even a TV show, that one of these reality shows that was on about bad neighbors. You know, learn how to deal with people. I mean, really.
I agree. I think you just get a giant toilet and flush them. Fascist police officer Steve Davis.
Well, I think Holland could save themselves a lot of time and trouble, just pack up all these undesirables and send them to San Francisco for retraining. They're going to whip back into shape in no time.
At the whip part, I caught that. We'll be back in just a moment with Dr. Alan Keyes, Brent Johnson, Chief Steve, and me, right here on Talk to Solomon. You have a computer, if you're alive today, which means you have a hard drive, which means it's going to break down. Mosey, the backup people, for thousands, for Stan, for thousands of people, for tens of thousands of people, is simply common sense. You go to cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and sign up. It's just a few dollars a month. Let me tell you something. We had a break-in. They stole our whole computer. You know what? When they take the computer, you can't recover anything, but we had Mosey. We had the backup. We were able to restore everything simply by buying another computer. cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and give yourself common sense, peace of mind, great value, the best thing you've ever done. Sooner or later, it's going to be Mosey, the backup people. I like to eat. Do you like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com, check it out. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. we absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule.